pursued Yaakov Avinu, and he asked him, "Why did you steal my getchkes?" So Yaakov started stuttering. Why didn't he look to his grandfather? What happened when his grandfather accused him of destroying all the idols? Avram took the axe, he put it into the hand of one of the idols, and he told Terach, "I didn't do it." They got into a fight. So why did Yaakov pull the same thing? Sounds only very poshut. Because what you can get away with by your father, you can't get away with by your shver. Okay. Zok Tehillah Gemara. Gufa. We're right at the bottom of Kuf Samach Gimel on the base. Gufa. Amarav. Shtar Haba. Hu ve'edov ala mechet. Kosher. What if you have a shtar and it was already written once and you erased what was in the shtar? So now you don't have a virgin piece of paper. You have a paper that already has erasings on it. And you wrote an entire shtar as well as the Eidim sign on this paper that was pre-erased, it would be a kosher shtar. Now that it's erased, they should be a concern. Because if it was never erased, if someone would try to erase the shtar and write something else in and keep the original Eidim, thank you very much, that would be noticeable, right? Because you would see that the Eidim signed on nice white paper, and the second shtar that you wrote over is now going to look like it's on an older piece of paper. But if the Eidim also signed on that same type of surface, we're not worried. We're not worried that it's mezuyah. We would say that the whole shtar, original shtar, was erased with the Eidim, and the whole new shtar was written with new Eidim. Thank you, Monty. Okay. Maybe we need to be concerned that once the Eidim are signed on the shtar that looks like it was already erased, what stops me from erasing just the nusach shtar again and putting on a new nusach? And now they'll match because the shtar was written on an erased paper and the Eidim signed on an erased paper. So you won't be able to make that distinction that the Eidim are signed here on something that was erased, and there's a new text over here that we're trying to associate with the Eidim. Zokma, we're not worried about that. Because you could tell the difference if you have a text, let's say the signature, that was written on a paper that was only erased once, from the ksiva right above it, which would have been erased twice if we're to worry that maybe someone did that. So since you can always tell the uniformity of the paper, therefore, as long as it looks like the Eidim is signed on the same surface as the rest of the shtar, we don't need to worry. Because if the rest of the shtar was erased and written over, there would be a distinction between the way the Nusach HaShtar works and the way the Chasimus look. There is a Shaila Machlokes between the Rashbam and Taisus. Does that mean if I'm looking at the Chasimus Eidim and I'm looking at the Ksivas HaShtar, then I can tell this was written on something that was erased once, the Eidim was written on something that are erased once, and the Nusach HaShtar was written on something that was erased twice. Is that what it means? Or it doesn't mean that if you showed me a piece of paper where some of it was erased once and some of it was erased twice, even without writing on it, would I be able to tell? And that was negay because Tosfos brings up some other types of concerns that could have happened. So, Frank the Gemara, if you're going to tell me maybe there's another potential risk of fraud. Somebody wants to write a shtar. There's a Malva who wants to write a shtar. And he's a dishonest guy. So he's going to want to be mezayif the shtar. So what stops him from figuring out on a blank piece of paper roughly where the Eidim we're going to sign, have two Eidim signed there, and then erase that. Then write an entire shtar, including on the original Makam Eidim, and erase it again. So now what do you have? you have a whole star that was erased once, but you have the Mokam Edim that was erased twice, right? Then, so Dil Mashard Yuta Mokam Edim Ekar, Umachakle. The Chihader Machakle Lahai, when he now erases just the Lashon star, but not the actual Edim, now it will match perfectly. Havali Idi V'Idi, Nimchak Shtei Pamim, and it'll match perfectly. So why aren't we worried about something like that happening? In other words, maybe by the time he wrote the second star, the Edim was already, or the Edim were already on a surface that was erased twice. So then when you erased on Nusach Ashtar, which was written on supreme paper, and I put something else on it, now that's also going to be erased. Abaye, you know why? Because Kosovo Rav, Ein ha'edim choshmin al hamechek, ela m'kem nimchak b'fneihem. Edim will never sign on something that looks like it was erased unless they saw what it was. They saw what was erased and they saw what they were dealing with. So in other words, the precaution is we don't have to be worried about fraud because Edim would never sign something if they see that there was an erasure unless they know what was erased. So that would be the mechanism that would present the fraud, that would prevent the fraud. Meisvei, hu ala niyar, edav ala mechek, kosher. What if the entire Nusach Ashtar was written on a pristine star that was never written upon, but the Edim, the Mokam Edim, something had been written there before and it was erased. So the Edim are now signing on a piece of paper that was erased once before. But where the Lashon Ashtar was written, that's pristine. The halach is that's kosher. Why is it kosher? Dilma, because of my debay. Why aren't we concerned? Since you just told us that if a star together with the Edim are written on the Mechek, so if you have a set of Edim that was written on Mechek and the star was written on blank, all you need to do is erase that blank, erase the original star, write over a new star on top of it, and you don't have a problem that Edim don't sign unless they on a Mechek unless they know what it was, because you're using Edim that are there already. And now, if you examine it, it'll look perfectly. It'll look perfect because the Edim signed on the Mechek, and the star is now a Mechek, and they're perfectly parallel. And you said that would be acceptable. The Nechish Dilma Mechek Le Uksiv My Debay, and the Edim are already on the Mechek, so it would be a perfectly uniform star. Bava hu ve'edov ala Mechek. Zakt Gemara anu chiddush that whenever they sign on a Mechek, they have to write the following: the Kasvi Hachi Anachna Sahadi Chasamna al Mechka. We signed on an area in this star that had already been erased once before. But Ushtara Kasav al Niyara. But the star that we're signing upon, that Lashon was written on fresh paper. So now he can't erase that Nusach star and write something new. Because in the signature itself, it's telling us that the star was written on a clean, fresh piece of paper. So that would prevent the fraud. Where would they write? Where would they write this? Where would Adam write this comment that this star, we signed it, we signed on Mechek, but the star was written on fresh paper. The Kasvehecha. If they write that right below their signature, we're still very insecure because guy is late. The person who wants to forge a star will just cut those comments off, and no one will be the wiser. And if he's going to write it on top of the Edim, he could erase it because you're allowed to have a blank line. Yeah, no, have two blank lines.
Above the Edim where it is not with the word. Right. Above the Edim where it is not with the word.
But they could erase it. Zok to Gemara, I'll tell you what they do. The Kasvi bein Sahada l'Sahada. They sign Reuben ben Yaakov 8, then they write, this was signed on an erased area, but the star was written on a pristine area, and then Chaim ben Yaakov 8. So you can't cut out a half a line. That'll be obvious that something's going on over here. So that's how you have it protected. Correct, Gemara. If that's what you do, so that's a very, very strong security feature. Then ihachi ema seifa. Let's look at the seifa of this brisa. Hu ala mechek ve'edav al haniyar. So exactly the opposite of the case that we said earlier was fine. If it's the opposite, if the star is written on a pre-erased star and the edim sign on a pristine star, that would be possible. Correct, Gemara. Am I possible? Why would it be possible? Hachanami, here as well. And why would it be possible? Because we're afraid that they'll erase it again and write a new star. That's a good point. It's a good point. So let's keep that in mind. So am I puzzled? Hachanami nichdevu hachi. Let them write the same thing. Anachna sahadi chasalma al niyara. Let them declare that our signature was on pristine paper and the star was on mechak. Zok to Gemara, hashtonami. So here as well we have a problem. Mayamrit, what are you going to say? Moichik, chayzer umoichik. Frek dovi, ha'amrit. That's not a concern because einay doimen nimchak palmachas lenimchak shnei palma. Right, that was your question. If it's going to be erased the second time, it will be noticeable. Zok to Gemara, you know when it's noticeable? When you can make that contrast in the signature. Hanamili, hecha dechasimi sadi amecha. If the star is written on a mechek and the edim are written on a mechek, and you erase the star and try to write it again, then you'll be able to see that the edim signed where it was only erased once, and the star now as being presented, you'll be able to tell it was erased twice and rewritten. But if the edim are not signing on a similar piece of paper, so that you have the comparison, you can contrast them, you can compare them side by side, Ella and the Yara, there it would be lo yudiyah. You cannot tell the difference between one mechek and two mechek just by looking at it. If you can contrast it with an area right beside it that was only erased once, that would be noticeable.
On a separate piece of paper?
No, they're on the same piece of paper, but you only erased part of the paper, right? That's what a hochshash is. That you didn't touch the edim, but you erased the whole nusach star and you wrote a fake nusach star, right? You can't compare it because they wrote on pristine. The star is written on erased. We're saying you can make a distinction between something that was erased once and something that was erased twice, right? Yes, it'll be obvious to everybody that this was written on a mechek, but we just said that if the star is on the mechek, you're going to be fine. Right? The Gemara is trying to get the star on the mechek, going to be fine. The problem is if there's a two mecheks, we have a problem. But frankly, even if there's two mecheks, there shouldn't be a problem because we just said you can tell when you look at a piece of paper if it was erased once or if it's erased twice. So tomorrow you cannot tell if part of the paper was erased once and part of the paper was erased twice, and you have nusach on both sides. There you'll be able to tell. But stamazot to look at an erased piece of paper and know if it was erased once or twice, that would not be apparent. So so we could still do this. Why don't you bring another piece of paper, and erase it and write on it, and now compare it to the star and see if it looks like it was erased once, like the star that we're bringing, or the other one that we have here. You can't compare how one might react, how one piece of paper might react to the other. Now the response is we're talking about a cloth. Cloth is not manufactured with specific properties. Every cloth is naturally occurring, so it's different. There's different thickness, a different absorption value. So lemekad hamagila ze'av v'zeh dak umochak shel cloth of einay nikar kolkach. Depending on exactly the thickness and the constitution of this cloth, it would have a different look. So you can't compare side by side. So for Gemara, we have another option. How about v'lekabla lechasim yada? We have this star, right? Where the chesima was. I don't know. Did not let me answer to that question. I see by me, I'm not frozen because I can see people moving in my screen. So probably just this is frozen. So for the Gemara, how about do something else? How about right now the Edom are signed on a pristine piece of cloth, right? So let's be Mekayim the Edom. Okay, now that's out of the picture. And then let's erase the Edom and let them sign again, and now we can compare side by side. So Frek Gemara, how about Lakabel Chasimus Yada? This is Hadi Bevedina. So now we know the Edom are legit. Then to do the test to make sure that the star wasn't erased a second time, the Limchik, erase the signature of the Edom, and now the litany, now you can compare the place where the Edom was written to the rest of that very same cloth to see if they look the same. If something was erased right now, it won't look like something that was erased a couple of days ago. So you still can't make a proper comparison. So for Shaya, so wait, let's wait 3 or 4 days and then do the comparison. If a Zoivite were choshet, the Bezdin won't know that you have to wait, and therefore they might be Mekayim Ashtar improperly, and therefore that wouldn't be acceptable. So therefore, to sum it all up, if everything is on a mechek, that's going to be good, because we're not concerned that you'll be moichik to nusach ashtar. Keep the Edom, because it'll be noticeable that where the Lashon Shtar was written on the place it was erased twice. We also had an halacha that if the shtar was written on a good piece of cloth and the signature was on a mechek, that works as well, provided that in between the two Edom, it's noted that we signed on the mechek, but the shtar was written on fresh paper. But on the flip side, if the shtar was written on a mechek, but the chasima was on the niyar, there we cannot trust it, because we will not know how many times they were moichik the shtar, and we don't have anything to compare it to side by side. Okay, gewaltig. Reb Chanina ben Gamliel Omer, Mekusher. So let's look back at our Mishnah that discusses if a get or a shtar was not written the way it was supposed to, can you possibly salvage it by converting it into the other style of shtar? So the Mishnah says, back on Kuv Samach Amud Beis, Mekusher shekashvu edav metochli. A get mekusher whose edom should have been on the reverse side of the shtar, and the edom wrongfully signed on the front face of the shtar. Shnei amsulim, the pasuk shekashvu mechayev and mekusher shekashvu edav metochli. Both of these are puzzled. The Rashbam says because you didn't follow the exact process and specs of the Rabbanan who were masakim the stars. But Reb Chanina ben Gamliel Omer, mekusher shekashvu edav metochli. Kosher, that could be kosher. You know why? Because just make it into a get pashit. And there, it makes sense for the Edom to be signed on the inside. Okay, so now let's see the Gemara's comment on that. Dr. Gemara, Reb Chanina ben Gamliel, Omer Mekusher. Heishiv Rebbe Ledivrei Reb Chanina ben Gamliel. Rebbe asked a kasha. How could you say that such a shtar that was started off as mekusher and now you want to use it as a get poshut? How could you say that would work? Well, there's another difference between a get poshut and a get mekusher that we have not yet discussed at all. This is a whole new thing. Now, when they date a get, the minhag was to write in the get, not our date systems, but the date was always based on how many years the king was a king. So the first year of king so and so, the second year of king so and so, that's what you would use for a get pashut. But pashut molach shana, moyin lo shana. If he was in his first year, then we would say the first year to melech hachashverosh. Shtayim moyin lo shtayim, the second year to melech hachashverosh. But by mekusher you add a year. Mekusher melech shana. In the first year, you write it's the second year. Shtayim, Moin Lagimel. So I just want to stop a second. Why would they do such crazy things? So we know right off the bat that they bedavka tried to make the get mekusher more complex. It would slow things down and give the kohen an opportunity to to calm down and reconsider. However, it's not stam sheker, because I'm going to look at the fourth line from the top in the Rashbam. Sharei minik ha'uma kidlakamon lahakdim l'melech shana. It was normal, even in the secular world, to start counting a king's rule by his second year. So they would refer to the first or the second year. Why would they do that? They would do it because no kohen, no melech wants to be a newbie. I remember when I first started in the trade, so I had brand new clean tools. If I would show up the site, all of the trades would make fun of me. Oh, look at your cute new tools. In other words, you're a rookie. So they always wanted to give someone the image that he was a veteran. No, he's already a veteran king. And the Chacham said, by a get mekusher, since we want to be different, use this dating system, to put a lot of chilukim and chumrais b'mekusher to make it more complicated. Because of kohanim that would be too quick on the trigger to divorce their wives. So getting back to here, how could you say, Frekt Rebbe, that you can use the get mekusher as a get poshut? The date will be a year off. And what's the big deal if there's a year off? A big deal. What's the big deal? Let's have a look. Imagine someone borrows money on January 1st, 2024, and you write in that get, and it's the first year of the king, but since the get mekusher, you would write it's the second year of the king. So basically, you wrote January 1st, 2025, right? Now what happens is, Beni, and in 2024, before January 1st, 2025, the loiva had the money to pay back. Uparle, and he paid the malva back. And when he wants to pay the malva back, he says, Havli shtarai, give me the shtar that you're holding as proof of the loan. And the malva says, I'm really sorry, Mr. Loiva, I lost the shtar, but I'll write you a receipt, no problem. The Chasav Leitaver, he writes a receipt that you paid me back in July of 2024, right? Now what's going to happen is v'chimot is mane mashvele pasha. This shtar mekusher, when it reaches January 1st, 2025, he makes it into a get pasha, which now says that there was a new loan made on January 1st, 2025. V'amalei hani hashta the asbus b'noi. Yes, you borrowed money last year and you paid back, and that's why you have a receipt. Sure, you're showing me a receipt you paid back, but this is a new loan. This loan happened January 1st, 2025. So that would be a huge problem. Zokt Gemara, no, because Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, who says that you could make a get mekusher into a get poshut, holds ein koisvin shover. There's no such thing as a shover. You don't write receipts. If the malva cannot produce the shtar, the loiva does not have to pay. So therefore, there's no concern that this will happen because the loiva will not pay until he gets the shtar back. When he gets the shtar back, he will destroy it, and all peril is covered. Now, that's right. That's right. So yesterday, we had an interesting discussion about the extra features that a shtar has to have to make sure there's no fraud. And if you remember, we learned that if you write a shtar and its edim all on one line, Chaim Yankel borrowed $100,000 from Beryl, signed Reuven Eid and Shimon Eid, all on one line, we said that would be a kosher shtar, right? So the problem is Tosfos asks, why wouldn't there be the following concern? So Tosfos says, therefore, in order to avoid something like that, we insist that only 1/8 signs per line. If only 1/8 signs per line, then there's no concern that you could just write anything in. Because imagine you have two items signed on the same line, and there's a little margin on the right side. You can easily cut everything off above it, cut everything off below it, keep one line of a shtar, a tiny little strip of paper, and write on it, Reuben borrowed $100,000 from Shimon, and then you have 2 items right there. It would be perfect, right? So therefore, Zok Tosfos, as a minig, which we obviously stick to, is the 2 items never sign on the same line; they sign one below the other. Frekt Tosfos is still a great peril because if I just have Shimon ben Chaim Eid smack in the middle of the paper and the paper is blank on either side, you could write Ani Shimon ben Yaakov Eid owe $100,000 to Beryl, and now the Aid himself is at risk of being defrauded. So Zaktosh is that we're not worried about. No, you're not. So maybe it wouldn't have the word aid, right? But whatever the case is, or I owe $74, I $1. No. But whatever the case is, there's a peril there. Zaktosh is we're not concerned about that. Because that's the aid. But you want to know when on the pre-printed ones?
No,
In those days, they probably had to write aid. They didn't have pre-printed forms. So I can be an aid on myself that I owe money. So the question here is, why isn't Tosfos concerned about that? So Tosfos, this is something that the loiva brought upon. I'm sorry, that the aid brought upon himself. When he signed in the middle of the paper, he should have X'd out the blank on either side. He was negligent. The takanas that we make, the pasul stories of Tosfos, are only if the Adam sign and it's going to imperil the loiva on the star. So that's what we're worried about. And therefore, if you sign in two different lines, that won't happen. Is the aid himself in danger? Yes. So let him take the necessary precautions. Because if you have two different lines, so then you won't be able to write a star on one line because you need the second line for the aid, for the second aid. Right. The whole reason why there's an issue is we learned that if you write a star and you have the two aidim, they're all signed on one line, that's a legitimate star. But if it's on two lines, that's not a legitimate star. Then we force you to be mekayim those aidim again. So Zok to Gemara. So speaking, we wrote a shofar. So that opens us up to what was the shiloh over here? What was the big concern about this date issue? If I write January 1st, 2025, maybe the loan actually happened in 2024. It was paid off, and there's a receipt, but the Malva will claim there was a new loan made, right? So the Pashup Shata, where we're learning that we're concerned to protect the loiva. But Duktosh has a different approach. We're worried about lakuchos because now the Malva can.
If we know that we're doing a year ahead, it comes January 25th and it says the second year, you know that already touched.
Right, he opened it up to a get poshut, and now it's a regular stat that would have a normal date. So Zoktosh says we're not worried about protecting the loiva. We're worried about protecting the lakuchos. Any property that was sold by this loiva is now going to be susceptible to seizure by this malva for a fraudulent loan because the loan was already paid off. That's what we're worried about. We're not worried about the loiva losing money. You know why? The iuhu the afsed nafshe kishalova b'haishtar kidaprishleil. Once again, the abundant in their rules of preventing fraud are only concerned if you could be defrauded due to no fault of your own. You have a legitimate star, two of them signed, and they'll play around with it. But if you yourself brought that upon you, like Tosfos said earlier, with an aid signing on a line and nothing else is on the line, that aid himself is causing himself danger, we don't protect you. You have to protect yourself. We're only going to deal with a star that someone can get hurt who's not responsible. So Tosfos is saying that's why we're not worried about the life himself, because once again, there's a certain amount of responsibility that we expect every person to have, and there's a certain amount of due diligence that we expect them to do. But Gabe Edom, the last of the misful Ishtara, yesterday we learned that we won't pass the star because Mishum Shiyuchal Azayif, Allah Edom Atzmam, Lahoitze Aleim Ksav Yadam. That we're not concerned about. The Inu, the Afsadu and Afshai. It's the Aid himself who was sloppy because when he signed, he should have blanked out, he should have crossed out the cloth on either side. Inami Yeshlamar, the Ein Lahen Hafsad Lukuchles. There won't be, it's speaking in the case where the Lukuchles have no loss. How could it be where the Lukuchles would have no loss? The fact is, we're saying that there was a new loan made in 2025, and now the Lukuchles will be liable. Dr. Morko, in the cause of Zashtar Beloy Achrayas. What if it was written of portion of the star, there's no Achrayas? So there, you're not concerned about a Lukuchles losing his property, because this star will never allow a Malva to collect from the Lukuchles. Or maybe you are chashish for the life himself. You can't make this so much the negligence of the loiva. This was a little bit complex for him to figure out that the guy's going to pull a new star. Well, Okay, so that takes us to the end of this discussion. Rebbe said there would be a problem with someone reusing the star because it's post dated. So Zok to Gemara, it won't happen because there are no such thing as receipts unless the lawyer gets the star back from the Malvi, he doesn't have to pay. So frankly, Gemara, Rebbe is challenging Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel by suggesting a difference between the get Mekusher and the get Pasha that wasn't discussed in our Mishnah. So obviously, Rebbe knows exactly the details and the nuances of a get Mekusher, and that's why he was able to bring up this potential problem of the date issue. Umi Baki Rav Mekusher. Are you so sure that Rebbe knows exactly the details of a get Mekusher? I'll show you that he wasn't even so sure about it. Vahu Mekusher, the also Lakamei, the Rebbe. A get Mekusher once came to Rebbe. V'amar Rebbe Shtar Me'ucher zeh. It's a Shtar Me'ucher, meaning Rebbe himself didn't even know. Rebbe himself didn't even know that a get Mekusher you post-dated by a year. Because he himself said, the date's wrong on here. V'amar Zunin, and Zunin actually corrected Rebbe. Rebbe, and he told Rebbe, Kach min haga shel umazu, this is the minig of this umah, that is Malach Shana Moin Lo Shtayim, Shtayim Moin Lo Shalish. So you see, Rebbe didn't know. So how could he didn't know until Zunin told him? So how could he have challenged Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel with this challenge? After Zunin brought his attention that there's a different date used in the Gemara Kusher, so then he used that information to ask a kasha on Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. Hahushtar dav ksiv bey b'shnas ploini archon. It's in the year of Archon. What does the word Archon mean? It means once he's set up. Amar Reb Chanina, Yibadek Emasai Amad Archan B'Archanuse. We have to figure out when was the first year that he was king. In other words, Reb Chanina is saying that Archon means, the year of Archon means, it means the first year that the king was king. That's what it means. Obviously, it was a get Toshet, and we want to know what year it was written in. What if this king happened to have been a king many years? So Archon is not a specific year. Archon just means when he's set up. So how do we know it means the first year? Maybe it means the 5th year that he was a king. Why are you assuming that Archon is referring to the first year that this king was in business? Zakta Gemara, the Dilma Dorch Malchus, Amar B'Hoshia, Kach min Haga Shalumazu. No, this is what the minig was in this particular nation. Shana Rishona Karin Archon. The first year that a king would be a king, they would call it. It was his year of Archon. It was the year where he established his malchus. Shnia Karin Digun. The second year we would call Digun. I guess Miloshin he already planted and he's reaping because Digun means growth of grain. Frag Gemara, Vidilma Avru. Maybe he was king, and there was a term limit, so he became Ois king, and then years later he became a king once again. So how do you know which year it's referring to? Who said it? The Archon means the first time he was king. Maybe it's referring to the second time he was king. So once again, you have a star that doesn't have a clear date. If a guy was a king, his term ended, and then he became appointed once again, that's not called Archon. That's called an Archon Digun, correlate. The first year of a second term would be Archon Digun. So I guess this year for Trump is his Archon Digun year, because it's his second term, but it's the first year of his second term. Gewaltig. Now, we always under the assumption that they always use the date of when the king was king to determine the year. But Tosfos learns that it's not even speaking about a king. It's talking about a minister. I'm just going to quickly peek at Tosfos. Tosfos says, nearly the high archon lav hainu melech. It was some government position that had a term limit. It's not a lifetime. It's not a Supreme Court appointment. It's only for a limited time. So Vice the Chois, Tosfos seems to be saying that sometimes he use the date in the star not only of the king but even of a Mamunah. Okay, let's see the Gemara right here. Tana Rabbanan, Hareini Nazir what if someone says, I am a Nazir? So how much of a Naziris is he accepting upon himself? We know Stam Naziris is 30 days. So Sumchas Amar Hina Achas. It's one set of 30 days. Digun, what if someone said Areni Nazir Digun? If someone said Areni Nazir Hina, it meant 30 days. If someone said Areni Nazir Digun, it means he's doubling up. It means Shtayim. It means he's going to have two sets of 30, which is 60-day Naziris. Trigun would be Gimel. Tatrigun is Arba. Pantigun, as in the Pentagon, Chamesh would be 5. So they're just giving the translation of words that if these are used in the Kabbalah Naziris, they would mean so many Naziris. Taner Rabban, Bias Ogel. Now the halacha is, the Pasuk tells us, when it talks about Tumas Negoyim, it says, Varas Hanega, Vihine Hanega, Bikirais Habayis, in the walls of the bayis. Walls are plural. The pasuk says again, Pasa Nega Bikiris Habayis. So whenever we're talking about Nagoyim, we're talking about a house that has at least 2 walls. So let's see what the Brisa says. Tanurban Bayis Ogel, which only has 1 wall, because it's one continuous wall. Or Digon, if it has 2 walls. Or Trigon, 3 walls. Or Pantigon, if it has 5 walls. Eina metama b'negoyim. It will not be metama in the goyim. But tatrigon, if it's a house with 4 walls, so either a square or rectangle, or maybe even a parallelogram, metama b'negoyim, that would be metama b'negoyim. Minanami, where do you know this from? The Toner Rabbanan. Lamala oimer, the first pasuk says kir kirais. It doesn't use the word kir abais. It doesn't say you found the nega in the wall of the house. You found it in the plural, in the walls of the house. Shtayim. Lamata oimer again, kir kirais. So 2 plus 2 is 4. Shtayim harei kan arba. So the Gemara is literally putting 2 and 2 together. And we're learning that a house, in order for it to be able to suffer from Tumnus Nagoyim, has to have 4 walls. Okay, this Gemara we learned already. Hahuma kosher the asala kamei de Rebbe. Well, Rebbe said, Ein's man boze. How could this star be kosher? There's no date in it. Amar Reb Shimon Rebbe, Reb Shimon, his son, told him, Shema beik sharav muvla. This is a get kosher. It's sewed up. Maybe in the concealed area, that's where the dates are. Talia, they opened it up. V'chazia, and they saw it. Hadar chaza bei Rebbe bebishus. Then Reb Shimon saw that Rebbe was looking at him with a little bit of a dissatisfaction. In other words, why did you write a get that first looks like it doesn't have a date? Who told you to write anything about a get mekusher? And we just learned that Rebbe didn't like a get mekusher, right? He wasn't so learned in the get mekusher, so he was looking at his son like, why are you making was Haxton Kapara and make a regular star? Why did you have to make a get mekusher? He was upset at Rebbe. Rebbe was upset at his son. Amrlei, so Reb Shimon denied it. Lava no kasvasei. I never wrote this get. You know who wrote it? The Sefer Rabbi Yehuda Chaita Kasvei. Rabbi Yehuda wrote it. So why are you upset with me? So Rebbe said, okay, you want to deny that you did it, but to go blame it on somebody else. Why should you speak Lashon Hara on Rabbi Yehuda? You didn't need to tell me that it was Rabbi Yehuda. You could have just told me that it wasn't you. There was another occasion. Zimnin have a Yosef Kamei. He was once sitting in front of Rebbe, the Chapazuk Siddur B'Sefer Tehillim, and Rebbe was finishing off one of the 5 Chalakim of Tehillim, and he was reading it out of a cloth, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful ksiva. Amar Rebbe, so Rebbe said, "Kama miyushak ksavzeh." What a beautiful ksav this is. Amar Lei, so Reb Shimon told his father, "Lava nokas fasei." I didn't write it. I don't get the credit for writing such a beautiful cloth. Yehuda chayta kasvei. Yehuda wrote it. Amar Lei. So again, the Rebbe told him, "Kalach meloshen hara." So for the Gemara, this is a compliment. This is not loshen hara. Bishlam hasam ika loshen hara, because it's a derogatory thing to write a star magusher. Elahacha my loshen hara, a compliment that someone wrote nice. Why would that be loshen hara? Dr. Mamishum de Rav Dimi, the Tanya Rav Dimi, Achua de Rav Safra, la'olam al yisaper adam b'tevasei shel chaverei. A person should never even speak complimentary about his friend. Shemitoich tevasei. Because if people are talking good about a person, it could lead to speaking ill about that person. Now, this is a very difficult Gemara. The Marsha, whose Yorchet was yesterday, comments on this, because the Gemara, one Gemara says it's only if someone is Marba B'Shvach, he goes on and on over the top about what a great guy is, it's inevitable that someone's going to say, haha, he's not so great, he does this and that too. So you're actually inducing Lashon Hara to be spoken, A, or B is, even yourself, if you're going over the top of this guy, you'll say, listen, I don't mean to be a malach, he does ABC also. I'm just talking about this. So either way, it's dangerous. But the problem is, in this case, not over the top, just mentioning that this person happened to be the cipher. Why is that such a bad thing? Why is that such a bad thing? So the Marsha has a very interesting spin on it. He says, by identifying Rabbi Yehuda as the cipher, so you're saying, oh, he's the cipher, so he probably wrote that get Mekucher. Rabbi Shimon wasn't a cipher. So who would have written the get? Who would have written that star that we spoke about earlier? Rabbi Yehuda, because you see Rabbi Yehuda is a cipher. So by reinforcing in Rabbi's mind that Rabbi Yehuda was a cipher, that's doubling down on the Lashon Hara that he said that the get Mekucher was written by Rabbi Yehuda. That's what the Mashal says. I'm sorry? No, I understand, but it's bringing it up again. You know, if you cipher, we blame on Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rav Amar Rav. Shalosh Averis, there's 3 Averis. Ein Adam Nitel Mehen B'chol Yoyim. A person will never be nitel from them. One is here Avera. The other one is Iyun Tefillah, which we'll have to see what Iyun Tefillah means. The Pashup shot that many say Iyun Tefillah means is if you're so intense with your Tefillah as if to expect that Hashem is going to have to answer your Tefillahs. As the Rashbam suggests, Meforshim, Shalach Hashem Ispal, Don, the Liba, Shishal Makadosh Baruch, sorry, I daven that Hashem has to give it to me. That's not how it works. Hashem, I davened, I gave you whatever you want. You got to give me what I got. In other words, putting too much pressure on the Rebbeinu Shalom. And V'loshen hara. So Tosfos asks, every day someone has such an attitude of tefillah. So Tosfos has a second shot. Even tefillah means a guy spaces out during davening. No matter who you are, change shum adam zok Tosfos yochol lachaven b'tfilasai heitiv. Every person spaces out a little bit in davening. That's very reassuring because I know I'm part of the tzibur. So everyone spaces out. That's what it means. Frank Gemara Lashon Hara. Are you telling me every person is over Lashon Hara every single day? That's not logical. Ella avak Lashon Hara. It's referring to avak Lashon Hara, and the Rashbam gives an example of Nur Be Planya. If someone says, "Oh, Yankel always has fire in his house," that could either mean that he has guests a lot and he always has food prepared for them. But you know what it could mean? It could also mean that he's a fresser. So therefore, it's avak Lashon Hara. Amar B'Yehuda Amar Rav, Roiv B'Gezel, most people are nichshel in Gezel every day. As the Rashbam says, Roiv B'Nadam Chashudim Ala Gezel Ke'en Gezel. It doesn't mamish mean you're going to go take money out of somebody's pocket, but it's Shemoyin Le'Teir B'Masun Matayin La'akevish Me'Reva Charoy Le'Chaver. Sometimes in business we do things that aren't 100% squeaky clean. Umiyut Barayis. Meet the people are nichshel in Arayis, but Takoil B'Lashon Hara. But everybody's nichshel in Lashon Hara. Freit Gemara B'Lashon Hara Sol Kedaitach. Not everybody's nichshel in Lashon Hara. Ella avak Lashon Hara. Everybody is nichshel in avak Lashon Hara because it's so darkistic and so easy to say something inadvertently that could be considered avak Lashon Hara. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we finished off Kuf Samach Daled. Tomorrow Shabbos is Kuf Samach Hey, and I think Kuf Ayin Vov is the end of the Masechta. So we're within 11 days of finishing Bava Basra. Everyone should have an awesome, wonderful day.